devil would return. If anyone read from the Book of the Dead.
Kunda.
Although some of us were a little underwhelmed with the horror elements of Evil Dead Burn, the movie did well when it came to expanding the existing lore of the Evil Dead franchise, and part of that expansion was the Circle of the Wise Men. Of course, there are going to be spoilers from this point forward, so heads up. The movie introduced this order as one that's dedicated to finding weapons to fight the Kandarian Demon and its many forms, and in this video, we're exploring everything there is to explore about the Circle of the Wise Men, including the possibilities that the Circle included the likes of Raymond Knowby as well as Ashley J. Williams himself. So, without further ado, let's get right into it.
Despite my warnings, they read from the book Unleashing Demons.
How are the Circle of Wise Men and the movie connected? So the precious little we know about Benjamin Price and his Circle of the Wise Men should actually be credited to scaredy cat Joseph Price, who somewhat finds his courage by the end, but by then it was too little too late. We know that Joseph was researching his book, his fourth unfinished book, and in order to do so, he had moved to his dilapidated ancestral home. He had made the house's attic his office and used the place to research everything he could about his grandfather, Benjamin Price, who had seemingly abandoned the family. So one day, while researching or getting inspiration for his book, whatever you want to call it, our boy Joseph dropped his pen. And while searching for it, he came across a false wall in the attic, which was basically hiding this ancient dagger, and he unknowingly removed the protective runes and hexes wrapped around it. This mistake would cost Joseph dearly, as the hex and the ruins were basically a protective barrier that had been masking it from the Kandarian Demon and its Deadites, and this mishandling of the dagger was exactly what drew Deadite Jessica to the area in the first place. As we'll explain in a bit, the dagger was the only thing that the Deadites ever feared, and a simple touch from that dagger was enough to destroy the demonic essence living inside a Deadite. Naturally, the Deadites wanted it bad, so when Deadite Jessica from Evil Dead Rise sensed it, she rose from the lake to first kill Jared and Leo, and then targeted Joseph's older brother, Will Price, turning him into a Deadite, which is how the Kandarian Demon reached the Price family, and ultimately their ancestral home, where they correctly believed that the famed dagger was kept hidden. But why am I talking about the dagger so much? Well, it's the link that connects all the threads, and it was actually found by the Circle of the Wise Men, which included Benjamin Price. But that dagger wasn't the only thing they found. At the same place where the dagger was discovered, they also found the Book of the Dead, the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, the Naturom de Monto, whatever you want to call it, which brings us to our next entry, Benjamin Price and his role as a member of the Circle of the Wise Men. So Benjamin Price was a professor of ancient history, and his field of work must have somehow connected him to Castle Kandar, the same place where the Kandarian Demon's first notable presence was found. In fact, Castle Kandar was mentioned in the original Evil Dead movie as well. So you see, the Kandarian Demon is actually named after the castle itself. Anyways, Benjamin Price wasn't the only one who found out about Castle Kandar and its secrets. There were others as well. Although it hasn't been confirmed by this movie, I'm willing to bet a lot of money that Raymond Knowby and Benjamin Price knew each other and were more than just acquaintances. Now, who was Raymond Knowby? Well, he's the same man who was trying to translate the Book of the Dead in that cursed cabin in the woods where Ash and his friends first arrived in the original Evil Dead. Piecing the evidence that we have together, we can actually create a timeline and flesh out just how exactly Benjamin was connected to all of this. A similar line of work presumably brought people like Price, Knowby, and Knowby's wife together, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that this order had way more members than just these three, because we know about how they traveled the world searching for artifacts. And if you must know, Knowby was an archaeologist and a teacher at an unspecified university, meaning Knowby and Price could have been colleagues. These people eventually formed the Circle of the Wise Men and chanced upon Castle Kandar and its secret. Here they found both the Kandarian dagger and the Book of the Dead. Now, what's important to understand is that since Price was a professor of ancient history, he probably knew not to mess with ancient artifacts, and he probably also had some idea about how things went down during the 14th century when Ash went there, but Knowby was an archaeologist, which means he was generally more objective about things and was more about discovering and finding than learning things. This difference in mindset would eventually lead to the unleashing of the Kandarian Demon, because despite warnings from Price, Knowby ended up reading from this cursed book eventually. You see, after Castle Kandar, Professor Knowby and his wife returned to the US of A, more specifically that same cabin in the woods, and the couple had brought with them the Book of the Dead. Now, if these actions were undertaken with Professor Price's consent, we don't know. But either way, after coming to the cabin, Knowby started to translate from the book and eventually read the passage that raised the Kandarian Demon that brought it to Earth from its own realm. And that was when Henrietta Knowby first got possessed, only to be buried by her husband. And once the demon was active, it wanted to destroy the only weapon that could erase it. Of course, we're talking about the dagger, which happened to be in the possession of Benjamin Price. So my theory is that after taking care of Henrietta, Knowby presumably contacted Price and explained the ordeal to him of how he had unleashed a demon of great power that possesses the flesh. We don't know if these two men ever met again, but our friend Mr. Price definitely figured out that the demons would come for the dagger that he had in his possession, so he covered the weapon in hexes and runes before leaving his family to find more such artifacts which could help him and his order to stop the evil of the Deadites. But Benjamin also left his family because he wanted to protect them, and staying close to them would have put them in more and more danger. Plus, how could he possibly search the globe for these demon-killing weapons from his house? But Benjamin's family didn't take this kindly, and they started to resent him for spending more time with the Circle of the Wise Men than with his family, which was true, but the Price family couldn't see that Benjamin was actually making a sacrifice, not abandoning them for selfish reasons. And we're pretty sure that the other members of the Circle did similar stuff. Either way, Benjamin and the Circle would spend their time looking for these weapons, and it seems that they managed to collect plenty of them. Was Ash Williams a part of the Circle of the Wise Men? Earlier, I said that Benjamin Price brought that Kandarian dagger with him from Castle Kandar, but there's a couple of things I want to mention as well. First, it's quite possible that the dagger in Price's possession isn't the same dagger that Knowby found, and I say so because there's a high chance that several Kandarian daggers exist in our world, albeit from different timelines. But more on that in just a couple of minutes. Secondly, it is possible that Price knew Ash Williams somehow, and that's how he came in possession of the Kandarian dagger, which he then brought home. In previous installments, it's shown that Ash found a Kandarian dagger in a fruit cellar, and while that's a whole other story, we have to focus on the fact that in Evil Dead Burn, when Deadite Tia confronts Grandma Polly during the stairlift scene, we can see a picture of Bruce Campbell's Ash on the wall's left side. You can spot it at exactly 1 hour into the film. There's quite a possibility that Price and Williams knew each other. Maybe, at some point, they fought the evil together and lived to tell the tale, which is how Ash became a member of the Circle of Wise Men. The only other reason behind the picture could be that Ash was a relative of the Price family, but I highly doubt that. What do you think? What possible reason could there be for a picture of Ash appearing on the Price family wall? While you ponder that, let's move on to another topic that I promised to discuss earlier. The Circle of the Wise Men found multiple daggers. See, in the movie, Alice becomes the final lady in the Price house while everyone else gets turned into Deadites, and she had previously learned from both Joseph as well as the Deadites about the dagger in question. So, when Joseph dies and gets turned, she figures that the only way to get out of the house is by finding the dagger and using it against the Deadites. Alice manages to make her way to the attic and finds an entire cache of daggers of different sizes, builds, and designs. In fact, one of them was reminiscent of the Kandarian dagger used in Evil Dead 2, but when she hits Deadite Joseph with it, it does nothing to him. She uses several other daggers as well, but they also do nothing, until one of them turns out to be the one. This one was a rather rudimentary dagger, and when she strikes Deadite Joseph with it, he perishes immediately. But I think that these were all Kandarian daggers, they just didn't all work on every Deadite. Perhaps different Kandarian daggers are used to slay different types of Deadites, and these types could be based on, maybe, how the Deadite was brought to life. Perhaps the different books of the dead are connected with their respective daggers, and if you think about it, we've had at least 2 of them, including the one shown in Evil Dead Burn. So, given all that, a very important question comes to mind. Was the Circle of the Wise Men a cult or an order? Before this film came out, there were a bunch of theories floating around online. Some said that the family shown in the trailers was actually part of a cult, while others believed that a cult worshipped the Deadites and the Kandarian Demon, but all such stories proved false. In the end, the Circle of the Wise Men turned out to be the good guys who were actually dedicated to fighting the evil, but I really don't think we should term these guys a cult. I mean, a cult is generally defined as a group centered around extreme devotion to a charismatic leader, ideology, or object. In modern usage, it often refers to insular groups that use coercive psychological manipulation, isolate members from outside support, and exploit them for the leader's gain. Historically and anthropologically, cult simply meant a system of religious veneration, worship, or ritual. Derived from the Latin word cultus, meaning care or adoration, the term was used neutrally to describe the rites and practices dedicated to a specific figure or deity. For example, the ancient Roman imperial cult. Many academic experts prefer the term new religious movement today to describe alternative faiths without the narrative baggage associated with the word cult. But none of these definitions really fit the circle of the wise men. These guys are more like an order, or more specifically, a socio-religious order, like for example, Dumbledore's army. A socio-religious order is typically a community whose members take vows to live together under a specific spiritual rule. These groups synthesize faith with communal living and social work. Alternatively, the term refers to socio-religious movements that seek to reform society by rooting out oppressive practices, and if I'm being perfectly honest, the Deadites seem pretty oppressive to me. Sadly though, we've come to the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons because that's the best way to tell us you liked it and to tell us you'd like to see more. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time.